Fontaine has seen an absolute drought of Dendro units, with the recently released Emilie being one of the first in a long while, and she taps in on quite the interesting niche of pyro-Dendro-related reactions. Burning and Burgeon on the whole were definitely the middle child of the Dendro era, and since we're entering the Pyro Nation, I thought it'd be interesting to discuss. Will Burgeon get buffed in Natlan? My name is Juice, and let's get into it. First, we need to talk about the rough history that Burgeon has had to put up with. Back in 3.0, Dendro was a fresh element that was being unleashed for the first time. We didn't know what to expect out of it, and everybody was running all around the place trying to figure out what the heck everything even did. Fun times, I tell you. Among all this running amok, people figured out the core basics of Dendro. Haha, core mentioned. Anyways, it was discovered that there was Hyper Bloom, Bloom, Quicken, and Burning. And Burning now has Emilie, yet if you want to try her out, you're gonna need Primo Gems. Where can you go to afford these better? Well, allow me to introduce you to Loot Bar. Loot Bar is a wondrous service which can offer you cheaper Genesis Crystals and Stellar Jades compared to the official prices shown in-game. Look at this comparison between the official cost and the Loot Bar cost. New users get a wonderful 5% off, and the prices are up to 20% cheaper compared to the official channel. Loot Bar is completely safe as a service, and has countless positive reviews. But how does it actually work? Glad you asked, my friend. First, input your UID. That's right, you need no login information whatsoever. Choose your desired package, and then boom, what do you know, more Primo Gems for me. This is all legit since the site uses a VPN, which is how they cheapen the Primo Gems, and official top-up methods are used. Check out Loot Bar today to save on all your gacha needs. This peculiar fellow was interesting, and adding Hydro into the cake mix could turn it into Burgeon. You see, back then, we didn't have Nahida. Just DMC and Kale, and also Tainari. So all Dendro teams were at a fraction of the power that they are at now, and the potential of the element was very restricted back then due to the lack of an extremely consistent Dendro applicator who could also provide a ton of buffing. That would later on be Nahida, of course. Every single Dendro reaction seemed promising in 3.0 because it was the start of a new region and every character was yet to release. We could only imagine what everyone would do, but based on the reaction archetypes, it became pretty clear what everyone would be. Cyno for Aggravate, yet later on people realized that Quick Bloom Cyno is just way better, and that's still the case. Nilu for Bloom, Dia for Burning and Burgeon. Surely Dia for Burning and Burgeon, surely. Burgeon honestly seemed promising, since Toma synergized so well with the team and he was a unit that was previously quite forgettable. A lot of bad units got buffed with Sumeru's inception, honestly. Kuki Shinobu went from being absolute hot garbage to being an extremely solid 4-star pick thanks to Hyper Bloom. And since all Dendro teams weren't at full potential back in 3.0, Burgeon wasn't that much worse than its Hyper Bloom and Bloom colleagues. Yeah, here's the thing. Everybody was waiting for Nahida to come out, as she would buff basically every Dendro team ever. She came out, and what do you know? That did indeed end up being the case. Except, Burning and Burgeon just got kinda left in the ashes. I'm here every night, folks. Don't get me wrong, Nahida coming out did indeed buff up Burgeon's performance by a wonderful amount, but we basically never saw a dedicated 5-star Pyro character who was all about making the reaction great. Dia's kit was a complete mess, so to this day, nobody really knows what the heck they were trying to do with her. They most likely ran out of time when in the drawing room, and the character had to come out eventually, so we decided to slap her on the standard banner. Problem solved. Surely. Except this only created more problems for Burning and Burgeon. It basically never got any real buffs, and pretty much nobody bothered to pay any attention to it, since it ended up being such a mid-team archetype. There was quite literally no reason to play it when the Hyper Bloom Overlords existed, and the poor reaction basically never saw the light of day again for the rest of the Dendro era. Almost forgot Burn Melt Ganyu. That team's pretty neat actually, but outside of that, yeah, nothing much. Fontaine didn't help much with this either, of course not until recently. For the majority of Fontaine, we received basically 0 Dendro units because Hoyoverse was most likely trying to avoid heavy Dendro fatigue after it was front and center for all of Sumeru, which makes sense. We returned to more traditional DPS builds, with funky HP loss mechanics being center stage this time around. This meta brought us some of Genshin Impact's most broken characters known to man, especially in the first half of Fontaine. Linny, Nervalette, Lady Farina, Novia, and Xian Yun were such bangers to have nearly all in a row. Sorry, Emilie, you're kinda tied to your C1, but at least your melt team is really good. Plus, we got two ridiculous 4-star characters, that boy Gaming and Chevreuse. And while not every single character in the latter half was an absolute winner, with Chiori and Siegeween just being okay, we did get some other bangers in the latter half of the Fontaine patch with the absolute legend that is Arlecchino, and holy guacamole, dare I say that she also has the best animations in the entire game. We're entering Honkai Impact 3rd quality territory, lads. Chlorand also had amazing animations and was a pretty good addition to the Aggravate roster, while also featuring numerous other teams where she performs pretty well, like Chlorand Hyper Carry, Overload Chlorand, and even the damn physical Chi-Chi team. Hear that, Eula? Freaking Chlorand is Genshin's best physical DPS. Yet throughout all these insane character releases, not once did we see the rise of any new Dendro units, which basically put the writing in the wall for the Burning and Burgeon reaction on the whole. Literally nobody could have predicted what would happen next. For starters, Hoyoverse added a Burning artifact set into the game next to Arlecchino and Chlorand's best in slot sets. This was pretty weird at the time, as Arlecchino had just come out and there were no new Dendro units in sight. Chlorand was coming up next, but she had literally nothing to do with Burning or Burgeon whatsoever, so this set just seemed really out of place. We could only assume that it was an indicator for the future. Lo and behold, Emilie gets introduced to the game, a character whose entire gimmick is working off of Burning and fitting into Pyrodendro-related teams. Not only is she a massive breath of fresh air when it comes to expanding the Dendro roster and providing us with a very unique kit, but she's an indicator that Hoyoverse is finally paying attention to Pyrodendro-related reactions. Allow me to invite you for some food for thought. Emilie has released right before Natlan. My thesis is that, much like Kazuha, who released right before Inazuma, and ended up becoming a meta behemoth throughout the entire 2.x era's meta, and is still a top 5 meta character to this day, Emilie is going to find some major success in Natlan. Why don't we discuss this a little further? We're entering the Nation of Pyro, and I have no doubt in my mind that Burning and Burgeon are gonna see quite a few much-needed concessions here. First off, Mualani is Hydro. I think it's fairly feasible to believe that she's going to work pretty nicely with Burgeon and that Emilie is going to have excellent synergy with her. I'm just spitballing here since none of this is really confirmed yet, but I do believe that since we don't have a specific Hydro unit that truly adores Burgeon specifically, Emilie and Mualani will both see success here. Secondly, Kinich. My man's a Dendro character, and Burning-related reactions are the only thing that the oh-so-flexible Alhaitham doesn't cover. So I expect Kinich to step up and take the mantle as one of Emilie's best partners in crime, not to mention how I expect Kinich to just appreciate Burning and Burgeon reactions on the whole, even without Emilie being involved. I also think that Movu Ika is going to be a big buff to Burning and Burgeon in some way, shape, or form. This is because if Mualani and Kinich do end up working with this archetype, note that pretty much every pre-Archon new character release tends to get a massive upgrade once the Archon of their respective region releases. This has been true for both Sumeru and Fontaine at this stage. And since they're already gonna work with Pyrodendro-related reactions, Movu Ika buffing up these teams is only gonna increase the reaction standing in the meta on the whole. And if this doesn't end up being the case because Movu Ika herself is a DPS, I wouldn't be surprised if Emilie was an absolutely fantastic teammate for her. I can see Burning on the whole becoming a much more core integral reaction with the release of this region. Now, this doesn't mean that literally every single Natlan character is going to revolve around Burgeon. Shilonen, for instance, is obviously going to be all about Geo teams and whatnot. Even Sumeru, the era where Dendro was being pushed the most, had a few important non-Dendro releases like Scaramouche. But a few good characters is all a reaction really needs to be formidable. I mean, shoot, back when Freeze was really big back during the 2.x era, the reaction was pretty much being carried on Ayaka and Ganyu's back. Freeze wasn't crazy because of anybody else, really. So if Mualani and Kinich end up being good Burgeon or Burning units, that's all the leverage we really need in order to start parroting Natlan buffed Burning and Burgeon. It also makes sense, since each region of Genshin tends to have a different kind of meta. The 1.x era was the grouping meta, where our beloved Venti reigned supreme, while also giving rise to the freeze meta once Ganyu rolled around. This persisted all the way throughout the 2.x era until 2.7 when freeze was suddenly halted in the abyss by a crap ton of cryo enemies, and throughout Inazuma's time, we also had the national team meta. My god, those times were fun, where Rational for the skill issued and International for actual goats reigned supreme. Jokes aside, Rational was also incredible at this time, and I still find it incredibly funny how Rational is pretty much the opposite of what Raiden was during the Inazuma Archon quests. Yet that was still our best in slot team's name. After the ending of a 2.x era completely extinguished Freeze, the Dendro meta completely took over, and then it wasn't too long until Fontaine came along and decided to play ball with HP a funny amount. On the whole, each new region introduced something new and fresh with the meta for us to experiment with. A burning-based meta is not completely out of the question, in my opinion. Natlan is extremely close either way, so I'll be waiting with bated breath. With that being said, I'm very happy with what Emilie was able to provide the meta in terms of variety. I think that Natlan is gonna bring a lot of cool things, and quite frankly, I feel a little nostalgic, as Snezhnaya is going to be the next region after this, and we'll have come full circle at that stage, with Cryo once again taking up the meta mantle once that day comes. In any case, we'll just have to wait and see. I invite you to share your thoughts down below in the comment section. Remember to join my Discord and follow my Twitter, both of those links will be down below in the pinned comment and description. My Ko-Fi will also be in both of those places if you're interested in supporting me. Otherwise, feel free to check out my channel memberships which have opened up recently as of posting. You can gain access to some cool emotes, more perks and tiers coming soon. I stream on Twitch too. Check me out at twitch.tv/JuiceChanYT if you want to catch me live sometimes playing Genshin, Wuthering Waves, Honkai Star Rail, and much more other things. Hopefully this video was able to give you some interesting perspectives on the ever so potent future of burning in Burgeon. This has been Juice signing out, and even if Kinich is Dendro, my guy will apply Pyro because he is hot.